Tuesday, August 29th, we got up at 5 a.m. to catch our flight from Karara to Perth, and I must say it's the first flight I can ever remember being on that actually lifted off of the runway 2 minutes before its departure time. So we got to Perth in good shape, rented a car, grabbed some groceries for the cooler, and stopped at Forestfield, which is right by the airport, so a real convenient place to jump out and grab a few trains. There's always seems to be light power moving around there. And then we drove up to Swan Valley, where we ate lunch and had a couple of trains go by us there, so did pretty well on that piece of it. And then we drove north, the 4-hour drive to get up to Lindsay and Liz Morrison's, which is at Bookara, south of Geraldton, on the west coast. And we'd be guests in their house for the next 4 nights. And as usual, they put on a superb dinner, always wonderful meals at the Morrisons. But one of the first orders of business was to unpackage a battery charger that Lindsay had picked up for Lon when we were in the Pilbara. We had power problems, and one of my converters absolutely blew up, and Lon had a battery charger for his Nikon get fried. So we were having power problems before we decided to never plug anything in the Pilbara again. And so anyway, Lindsay had picked up a charger for Lon, so he was able to recharge his batteries, which he'd been nursing along through the entire portion of the Pilbara part of the trip. So that was good news. Mel had ordered a lens to replace the one that he had damaged, so we were starting to get gear back together again after the havoc that was wreaked upon it in the Pilbara, which is often the case. Harsh environments are like that. And then we stayed up late into the night visiting. Lindsay worked a career at Hammersley Iron, so there's always a little more to learn from Lindsay as you stay up into the wee hours, talking all things railroading in Australia. And if you want a closer look at the line out of Geraldton, I wrote a Through My Lens called Midnight at the Oasis in the January 2023 issue of Railfanning Railroad, chronicling our stay at Liz and Lindsay Morrison's. Very much an oasis after the Pilbara.
Is that not cool?
That's pretty neat.
That's for you.
You know what that where did that come from?
That came from the railroad in Kansas City.
Oh well,
so
Breen has done that, taken photographs and got the t-shirt, so sounds good. Oh boy, you good help.
Thank you.
Then on Wednesday, August 30th, we got up at a leisurely 7 a.m. and headed east, actually north to Geraldton and then east on the narrow gauge line that hauls iron ore and some grain. And we got up late enough that we didn't catch the morning empty going east. We picked up a load and we shot him at Bringo, and we climbed up on the hill there, got the shots and climbed down real quick, and had just totally forgotten and spaced it off that they run DPUs. So we didn't get the DPU shot there. And the iron ore trains on the narrow gauge there are run by Horizon, and they are typically 100 cars hauling concentrate from the mine at Karara over to the port at Geraldton. So pretty neat action, and it's a hilly up and down line, so they take off fast and then get bogged down, and you catch back up with them, and then they roll down the next hill at good speed, and then you catch back up. So very pleasurable chasing on that line. And for power on that line, they run JT42CU Aces. Yeah, they're EMD Aces, 3,000 horsepower, 12-cylinder, narrow gauge, of course. And they typically run 2 on the front and 1 on the back. After the load at Bringo, we drove 2 hours east and picked up an empty meeting a load at Bell Siding, which is not real far from where the new line to the Karara Mine exits to the east off of the traditional main line. And we opted to chase the loads back the other direction, and so we chased those loads all the way back to Nurngulu, which is almost Geraldton. So that was pretty much the whole day, chasing them back. And then we shot some sunset shots right over the rails, and then headed for another dinner at Liz and Lindsay's. And the dinner that night was shrimp and lobster and barramundi, sea bass, amongst all the other usual stuff. So a pretty spectacular meal. And then we spent the evening visiting again, and Lindsay doled out at regular intervals various artifacts from his archive. Gave us a number of different things of Pilbara interest in particular. Mostly Hammersley iron type stuff, since that's what he was associated with. But all in all, another great day, fun evening at the Oasis. Sure nothing to complain about there.
What'd you get?
It's a locomotive manual for the M636
Awesome.
and the M630.
There you go.
Yeah, awesome. So, wow.
Greninin. That's a -8. -8 manual. That works for me.
Wow.
syrup.
Homemade from our farm.
Wow. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
The good stuff.
It is good
Wow.
stuff. On Thursday, August 31st, we got up at 6:15. Messed around at Liz and Lindsay's way too long and didn't get out in time to catch the eastbound. So we drove east a couple hours and we ran into a westbound at Witcherina, and we decided to chase that back to the port. So we chased it back to Kojarina, where he actually passed a ballast train with 2 DRs. And the DR class, they're fairly unusual locomotives, and they're essentially an SD38. So we opted to latch onto those, and we chased those to Geraldton, where we met Phil Melling. Grabbed lunch real quick out of our cooler while we were there. And then Phil was our navigator for the remainder of the afternoon, chasing the DRs south from Geraldton past Bookara. And it was a great afternoon. Got lots of good shots, courtesy of Phil. So hats off to Phil for getting us shots we would have been hard pressed to get to otherwise. We drove a lot of little dirt roads connecting here and there, so it turned out to be a really fun afternoon with Phil. And it turns out those 2 DR locomotives are the only 2 of their class. They were rebuilt in a whole crazy sequence that I don't have etched in memory, but they were in Tasmania for a while and got rebuilt by Tasrail and I don't know what all before they wound up in Watco's fold in Western Australia. But neat locomotives, so learning more about them made the chase even a little more savorable, if that's even a word. And once we were done with the ballast train, we were really done for the day. So we landed back at Liz and Lindsay's at 2:15 in the afternoon. Had the afternoon for kind of a leisurely kickback, and got ready for the evening. And they invited some other guests over, and we kind of had a celebration dinner for Lon and Mel, who had both retired just prior to this trip. So this was kind of a retirement bash for them, and they got various words of wisdom, and it was quite fun. Lindsay and Liz, they know how to treat a guest.
and we were going to have balloons and a nice sign, the Lon and Mel show, basically. There's a couple of things I wanted to say. As a person who's walked away from a job the recent times, the first couple of weeks is pretty dramatic, or first couple of months, 6 months, because all of a sudden the golden eagle's not flying over and giving me this pay package. That disappears. There's a few other bits and pieces, and then you wonder how long you're going to live, and have I got enough money, and what are my kids going to do? There's a whole heap of things. But let me tell you, there is life after work, and it's good. Very good. So real, and I think both of you, as recently retired folks, will put it this way: excel. Welcome to the fold. Well, thank you, both of you. Wow.
Friday, September 1st, was our last day in Western Australia, and we got intel the night before that there was going to be a grain train loading at Canna, and we'd never chased grain on the main line there, so we went over to Canna, and about the time we got there, the crew was shuffling about, and they had made a move that didn't make sense to us, and they were basically getting out of the way of a loaded concentrate train. But they told us they were going to be several hours loading, so we knew we had time. So we took off after the concentrate train, and we chased it all the way back to about Bringo, and then doubled back, and we knew we still had time. So we spent a really fun 45 minutes or an hour doing some bird pictures. We'd been after parrots we'd seen them a number of times in that area, and we finally found an area where there was some parrot activity, and we just got out and walked around and spent some time shooting some bird pictures, and then went to Canna and shot them loading, and they just were having all kinds of trouble. They had an engine go down, and they didn't wind up getting out before dark, so we abandoned that and eventually and drove the fast way back to Liz and Lindsay's, kind of across the countryside instead of following the railroad, because we knew there was no action. And for power, the grain train had a couple of P-class locomotives. Those are GE CM25-8s. They are a Dash 8, 2450 horsepower. And they kind of almost remind me a little bit of the U50s that Union Pacific had, with a real stubby short nose. Obviously these are about a third that size though. But we were all set to do that, and then they didn't get out before dark, so that didn't happen. So Saturday, September 2nd, was a travel day, so we drove back down to Perth. We met Michael Forrester there and visited with him for a little while. Jumped on the plane to Adelaide, where we were going to meet up with John Kirk, Mark Carter, and Gavin Hughes. They were going to be our guides in South Australia. We were particularly interested in the Whyalla ore operation, but they had a whole slate of things for us, so that was going to be the next stage of the trip, and we would say goodbye to Western Australia. You might have noticed Phoebe wasn't with me today, just me and the four-wheeler. She got a bath this afternoon, and Nadine wasn't ready for her to be out running around in the woods again, so had to do it without her. Thanks for watching. It's getting ready to rain. I better head in.